You are listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with Rob Reed and Josh Galicki, bringing together the love of nature and photography. Episode 31. How badly can you treat your gear? Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with me, Rob Reed, and my co-host Josh Galicki. Hey Josh, how's it going?
Hey, not too bad, Rob. Coming out of the deep freeze. We've had some really cold weather over the past month, below freezing every day. A decent amount of the bay, or at least the edges of the Chesapeake Bay, they've been iced up. So it's made for some good photography, but I'm looking forward to warmer weather.
Yeah, we had a couple of weeks of quite cold weather, and now we're being slammed by storms again. So it's just wind and rain and whatever. Because, we haven't spoken in ages. This is the first time, I think, this year, isn't it?
Yeah, before the holidays, I think, was the last one. So, yeah, it's
amazing how time goes. And we're at the end of January as we're recording this.
Yeah.
So I just don't know where the time's gone.
January's been a long month so far.
Oh, tell me about it. I've had some family stuff going on, which has kind of put a spanner in the works, with plans that I had for the beginning of the year and whatever, which is why we haven't recorded for so long. So apologies to everybody for that, for not getting anything out, before now. But yeah, sometimes life gets in the way. So it's been a bit busy here, and I just haven't got out shooting at all, since the Christmas break. But and I think you've been out a couple of times, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So many of the areas in some of these marshy areas and some of the lakes that I've been to, everything's been mostly iced over. So wherever there's some water melting, most of the birds are congregating. It's made for good photography. I've been photographing clapper rails on ice, great blue herons on ice, some short-eared owls, ducks. So it's been interesting, actually. I don't normally get to shoot snow and ice based on where I live. Last year we had no snow, nothing. So it's been almost a full month of it. So it's a nice break from things, although I think I've about had enough, at least with the cold.
Yeah, we hardly ever get snow and ice here. But I said we had a bit of ice. We had a couple of snow flurries, but it doesn't hang around very long. You'll get a dusting and then it will go generally. And then about once every 5 or 10 years, we'll really get slammed by it. But it's very rare these days with global warming. And all we get now is wind and rain. So.
It's going to be more and more extreme, obviously. You've seen what's been going on in Los Angeles, probably on the news.
Yeah. So that's frightening.
It's terrible. It's really terrible.
And well, do you see Georgina had in Australia had a bushfire as well, very close to, to I think it was a parents' house. Actually, she sent me a couple of pictures. Yeah, very scary. So
I think back to what was it, Rob? Was it 2019, 2020? They had those tremendous fires. This was already 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer than that. And it devastated Australia. I remember it was all over I know the national news here, and it was just a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah, and it's not going away, and it won't go away. Anyway, let's not get let's not get into politics. not on this podcast.
Glass half full, right?
Yeah, exactly. But no, so I'm just about to go away, actually. We're going. My wife and I are going to Wales for another week, so we go in a couple of days. So that will be nice. It's going to get cut a little bit short because of the family issues, but at least we'll get away. And we're staying in the same cottage we stayed at a couple of times before, right on the coast. So I can roll out of bed in the morning, pull the chest waders on, and go and photograph purple sandpiper and all that sort of stuff.
That'll be great. And a great bird. What a great subject, right?
It will. So I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully that'll kickstart my 2025 campaign. It's just been put on hold.
Just be sure not to lose your footing. Whenever you're on those jetties, they can get so slippery. Over here, they like to, be on the rocks and go in and out. And boy, a couple times I've almost took a dive with my equipment. Speaking of the topic we're talking about, I know a few people that have lost and dunked their equipment trying to shoot purple sandpipers on a slippery jetty.
So, well, fortunately, there's no jetty. It's just literally over. It's just like a rocky outcrop that gets uncovered by the tide. So it's not, well, you say that, then there's rocks covered in seaweed, and we all know how treacherous that can be. And so I need to be careful, but normally I'm crawling up towards them anyway. Because you can't get too close to them if you're just walking at them. You've got to be respectful, haven't you? And not frighten them.
And when you're crawling up too, you might have some barnacles to give you a nice.
Yeah. Well, there's a good little tip actually for dealing with things like barnacles, is if you've got neoprene chest waders, that their extra thickness of the neoprene does help cushion some of that discomfort, shall we say. It also keeps you warm in the winter too.
Yeah, thicker. Yeah.
So that's a good tip, and they're not that expensive. So yeah.
If not, you can exfoliate your skin a little bit, courtesy of the barnacles.
Well, okay. I've never called it that before, but yeah, exactly. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's going to be great. But actually, as you say, that sort of nice little segue into the topic for discussion today, which actually was mentioned to me or suggested to me by one of our listeners. So thank you very much to Andy Bruner for that suggestion, who wanted to know, how badly he and his wife could treat their gear. So I thought it was a good topic for discussion, to talk about things we've seen and things we've done to our own gear and what we put it through. And generally speaking, it's actually pretty robust. It just depends what you've bought, I think, and how high up the ladder you've gone with, with the equipment. But Josh, what's your worst camera disaster?
Oh, boy, I have to say I would say generally speaking, for me, it's sand, salt, or rain. I haven't had anything super, super tragic in the field. I do beat my gear up pretty good. The one thing I will say, though, you're talking about, the type of bodies. I always think it's a bit of a paradox because there's so many photographers who invest in the pro bodies and they're spending $6,000-7,000. And the more money people spend on something, the more they want to shine it up, protect it. And that's part of the investment, right? You're getting something more rugged that you can beat up, per se. And I see people wiping things down and they're trying to get it all, they're afraid to really put it to use. And that's why you're spending the money, is to put it to use. The worst thing that's ever happened to me in the field, a lot of salt content all around my camera, and my flash stopped working. I had to clean it off, and the contacts on my lens, some things got around that. So it was just having some functionality in the field, but I've never had a situation where, I dropped something, my camera busted into 1,000 pieces or anything like that. Most of my problems have been with salt water, because along the bay it's brackish and I'm shooting a float blind, or I'm laying on the, so there's always some sort of salt spray or some sort of water that will get on the camera, and it can do damage. You have to be proactive on that.
Yeah, salt is probably the worst one, but I remember, I think for me it was years ago, and I was shooting with the original Canon 5D, and I was on the top of a Roman wall. So, it's 2,000 years old, and I'm shooting a landscape, and I've got the tripod set on top of the wall, and there's like a 10-foot drop the other side. And I'm going for all these angles and trying to get it right. And anyway, I stepped back from the camera and I hadn't balanced the tripod correctly. And you can guess what's going to happen. This thing starts leaning over, and it just overbalances, and off it goes down the 10-foot drop. And I saw it go, and I thought, I'm not leaping over and trying to save that. That's just an insurance job. And I watched it drop, expecting it to break into, like you say, 1,000 pieces. And luckily for me, it was a bit muddy. The ground was a bit muddy. So I made my way down, expecting just to pick up this broken camera, and picked up this camera that was still in one piece with its lens still attached. And I'm thinking, okay.
Wow.
I looked at it, turned it all back on again, and okay, it hit the wall on the way down, and it had damaged the hot shoe mount. But apart from that, nothing. It was totally fine, and I carried on shooting. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. But I think that's testament to the way that thing was built. And my fortune with the soft landing, really. But it's still fallen 10 feet.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, you got lucky.
I did get lucky, but that was a real heart in the mouth moment. And then it's amazing how this sort of calmness comes across you, and you just go, well, it's going to happen.
That's right.
It's just an insurance claim, and just move on. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing it too often.
You make a good point. I mean, I insure all my gear. I've got a separate policy for it, and that takes a little bit of ease off of you, right? So I'm a bit more adventurous in terms of using my gear. I put my gear through the ringer, knowing I have that insurance policy. So that's something I think a lot of people, we invest so much money in this equipment. I think having that separate insurance policy is key, especially if you're going to be laying in the marsh. You're going to be shooting out in the open water. You're going to be in certain elements that may or may not have an impact on your gear. Get that insurance policy. I insure all of my gear. I can't remember what my premium is. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not too much either to insure that.
I mean, I think, I'm just trying to think what mine is. Mine includes some public indemnity and all that sort of thing. But I think it's about £40 a month. So, and I think it's about a 10-month plan, so it's about £400. So it's equivalent to car insurance, I think.
That's not too bad.
It's not too bad when you think that if you're okay. So if you've got a Z9 or whatever, and maybe you've got a 500mm prime on there, you've got 10 grand's worth of stuff in your hands. Pounds sterling, more in dollars probably. And that's like the value of a car. You insure your car and you don't worry about paying, the premium. Well, you do, but you have to pay your premium on your car. So why not pay it on your camera gear as well? But make sure you're covering accidental damage too, because, okay, you can cover it for theft. But as I said, if you drop it off that wall or you dunk it in the water or whatever happens, when these things do happen, then, I don't want to be saying goodbye to a Z9 at, $5 grand a go. If there's no way I wouldn't insure that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
As you say, it gives you a bit of confidence. Not that you want to do it, but I remember literally one of the first times I used the Z9 was a Shetland trip, and hanging off the side of the boat, the NOS boat, photographing diving gannets with a wide angle lens, with these things, as are coming in and their wings are clipping your shoulders. They're so close.
Well, they're hitting you in the face with their wings. That was something else.
It's mad. It's completely mad.
It's great.
So
madness.
And they're a big bird, and they're diving in the water straight in front of your camera, and I'm trying to hold it as close to the surface as I can. Guess what's going to happen? It's going to get more than a little spray on it, salt spray, and salt is the worst. You've got to get that stuff off the camera as soon as you can after you've done the shoot. I mean, I'll take dust
any day. If I'm I've been on some of these safaris and these game drives. Things always get dusty because it's dry, but salt salt can be a killer.
It is a killer. Yeah, absolute killer. And so you've got to get that off the camera as soon as you can. So make sure you wipe it down, and I guess that's part of it. I mean, you can put your gear through a lot of. It'll go through a lot because, I mean, the more money you spend on the bodies in particular, and the lenses, I suppose, but the better the weather sealing will be, the better build quality they'll be. Don't expect a 500-pound body to soak up the abuse that the same amount of abuse that you can give a 5,000-pound camera body. It's just not going to happen because they're just not built the same way. But as you'd expect a Z9 or an R5 or whatever to be well sealed and pretty robust. Whereas if you go for the sort of entry level or even the prosumer type bodies, they're just not going to be made the same way, because how can they be? They're cheaper for a reason, right?
Yeah, and you're paying. I look at it too. It's a bit of a premium for an entrance fee. And it's an entrance fee to shoot in crazy conditions. Some of the best wildlife photographs, as we all know, are shot under crazy weather events and conditions that are a bit unique, whether it's pouring rain on, you're on a game drive, you're in Africa, there's pouring rain, you have a lion there, or it's snowing, you're in Yellowstone, you're shooting bison or wolf. All these dramatic weather events allow for some of the best photographs. In order to do that, your gear has to be robust. Unfortunately, if you have a prosumer Canon Rebel, an old Canon Rebel, it may not make it through that. So you're paying to make sure you get a photograph in situations where other people may not, just because the elements are just too extreme. So it's worth it.
Yeah, I
But
mean
don't baby it. Right? Don't baby the gear. You know, that's
yeah,
another
yeah.
thing too.
I mean the other way of looking at it now is you can pick up some real bargains secondhand. You know,
Yeah.
particularly now we're all going into this sort of mirrorless era, you can pick up some really good, on professional level. I mean, take the D850 for example. You could pick up one of those now relatively cheaply, particularly if you had an old beat up one. You buy one of those for £500 or £400 or £500, which you probably can now if it's been through the mill a bit. And then if you find yourself in one of those situations, use something like that you actually don't mind if it's an end of life thing for it in one or two shoots. It kind of makes sense. But
one thing you mentioned about mirrorless, and that was a bit of an urban legend when I was crossing over from DSLR to mirrorless. A lot of people crossed over in that 2019, 2020, 2021 range, right? And folks were saying at that time, just isn't it's less heavy. It doesn't feel as durable. There's more electronics. You have the EVF. I'd much rather take, a Canon 1DX Mark III to sub-zero conditions in the Arctic versus the R5 or whatever. It turns out after years of shooting and people all have mirrorless now, it was really unfounded. I haven't seen that. The battery life, it's gotten much better. Even the R5 when it came out, battery was okay. I never had any problems. They didn't wear out earlier because of the cold and whatnot. And these cameras proved to be just as robust as the old DSLRs. The Olympus, for instance, they had some really robust bodies going way back on some of their higher end cameras. So I just thought I took it seriously because when you physically felt a 1DX Mark III and then you picked up an R5, obviously one was a lot lighter. It felt daintier in your hand, but there really wasn't much difference.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned the Olympus, but I've seen people, putting it under the shower head and just soaking that thing, and it's completely weather sealed. I mean, I wouldn't be dunking it, under the water, but I mean that'll
or OM1, I should say, right?
Yeah,
I was
the
saying
OM1.
OM1.
That's a really well made piece of kit, really durable. And if you're in, I think Peter Bambusek shoots with that in particular in all of those sort of rainforest situations where he's getting soaked all the time.
It has to be wet in those conditions, and he's got a flash on it too, right? So he's got other, he's got other things on the hot shoe. So he's got to be constantly wet when he's shooting all that stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess a lot of it does come down to the kit that you choose. So if you are in those sort of situations, just pick the kit. To suit the conditions of the shoot, basically. But I guess we're not all in that position where we can just pick and choose, and pick up one camera system one day and then another. So we all tend to sort of shoot with one generally, but.
And just don't get too attached to your gear either. I mean, part of the reason why I don't get attached to my gear is every couple of years, the technology changes so much. I upgrade probably more often than I should. Although I still shoot with the R5, I've been upgraded to the R5.
You're a gear snob, aren't you?
What's that?
You're a gear snob.
Well, I used to be. I'm less so now. I have to say, I'm proud. I've been shooting the R5 for 5 years. I haven't upgraded to the R5 Mark II, but because we all at some point change gear and we upgrade for new technology and whatnot, it's easy not to get wed to this stuff. We're not going to keep it for 20 or 30 years. And at the same time, I know many people who, they baby their gear in the field and they're afraid to do certain things because they don't want to get their gear dirty, or they think, they might do something to compromise it, and they're not getting the shot. Like you were talking, Rob, and I was on a similar excursion when we were in Shetland just a couple of weeks after you. If we weren't taking our camera and putting it over the boat down at the waterline, we would never get that perspective. If we were scared to get salt on our camera, we just wouldn't get it. So you either get the shot or you don't. And if you have gear that you can beat up a little bit, then beat it up. That's what I say. Don't sacrifice the shot because you want your camera to look shiny. Nobody's going to go home on your bookshelf and look at your camera and say it looks nice. Nobody cares. They're going to look at
they're going to look at your pictures, and that's what it's there for. It's rather like buying a brand new car. taking it to the supermarket and somebody's scratching it with a trolley. I mean, it's, the first time that happens, you feel really bad,
Yep.
but after a while, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And you just get on. No, it's the tool of the trade, and it's those people that are prepared to put their gear on the line that will get, those sort of award-winning type images, and images that, stand out from the crowd. It's what you're prepared to do. I mean, it's, I've said this before on the podcast, when Georgina came to stay with me, that was one of the things that stood out to me when we shot together for a few days, was she didn't care about the gear. It was just, that was just a means to an end. And, the lenses were going under, well, not completely underwater, but they were dipping, she was dipping lenses in water, and we're having to dry them out with a hairdryer afterwards and things like that. So, but it was a means to an end. It was, she did that because she wanted that close to the water perspective that, most people are not prepared to put their gear through, because they're too, as you say, too worried about scratching the car at the supermarket. You've got to get over that, I think. If you want something different and you're trying to stand out from the crowd and you want your work, to be the best it can, the gear's there just to be used.
Yeah. And, I see sometimes too, for my longer lenses, they sell, like, there's this popular product called Lens Coat. It's like this neoprene covering to help protect the lens. And that all makes sense. You can do all that. Although I do see those covers for camera bodies, which make no sense to me, or a cover for like a more wide angle lens. If you're shooting with a 24 to 105, I don't know why you need to have a neo, whatever. So I think you can even go overboard on some of that stuff. But I think with the longer telephoto lenses, the super telephoto, the 600, 100, the 500, or, the intermediate stuff, having some of those neoprene covers, that helps a little bit. I think that can't hurt, and it doesn't restrict you when you're in the field, when you're trying to shoot. Even in the rain, they have these covers. For me, I could just take a clear plastic bag. I put a Ziploc bag over my flash, so that doesn't get. And I just take like I could just put a clear bag over my lens of my camera, and it's good enough. So you can improvise when you're in the field.
Tell you the best things I've ever used, and I remember using this in Canada quite a lot when it rained, was the 5-pound plastic cover that's designed to go over the camera with a little, the little draw cord at the end for the lens. So it doesn't matter how big the lens is at the end. You can just adjust the sizing of it. And okay, it doesn't fit the camera perfectly. It is like putting a bin liner over it, but it's clear plastic. It keeps the most of the rain off, and it's $5 a go, or £5 a go.
It's just hard to get your hands in to grip the camera in the back. You know what I've seen people do, interesting enough? I've never done this, but I think it might be genius. A lot of people shoot shorebirds on the beach, and sand is always a problem. When you're shooting low, you get sand all over your camera, and then people will get like a paintbrush or something with soft bristles, and they'll get the sand around. Well, there's this one photographer, Rena Mealy, her name is. I know her just through social media, but she's fairly prolific with videos and so forth. She shoots in Long Island at this tern colony, and she takes, I guess I used to call it Saran wrap. That's the brand, but cling wrap, people would call it.
Yeah, cling film.
And puts it all around her camera body, and it's soft enough where you can operate all of the buttons and no sand gets in. And I'm thinking that might be genius.
Yeah.
And it's something I've wanted to try. That's right. Yeah. So, pro tip out there, maybe try cling wrap all around your camera when you're on the beach. And what's nice is you don't have to worry about getting your hands inside of it. It's covering everything, and you can operate, as long as you can operate the shutter, and a few things. You don't have to operate every button on there.
No, that's smart.
Yeah.
And it's not costing you hundreds of dollars, and it's a few pennies every time you go out. Yeah. Oh, I like.
So when you get up, all you have to worry about is getting the sand off of yourself. And
it reminds me actually of other little useful pieces of kit, like the skimmer pods. Talking about shorebirds and sand, is something like that is so effective as a support system, but it also stops you getting so much sand into your camera gear. I mean, personally, I don't like. I like to get a little bit lower than they.
Me too.
Allow
I use a bean bag, like a little bean bag, and put it down. But That skimmer pod is good. Whoever
Yeah.
came up with that, I mean, I would think that's a windfall, right? So many people have seen that, and they refuse to pay the $100 or whatever it is, and I get it. I mean, I sucked it up. I think I paid $100 for mine, but
You
they
didn't
just
get
get a
you
pan
didn't
and
get a
they
frisbee and then just
or a
put it through a
frying
hole.
pan.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what, yeah, for a few pennies as opposed to paying $100 for it. But I
yeah,
suppose then you got to do the work yourself, right? So
this is true.
yeah, it makes sense. But no, things that, little tips like that actually, can keep a lot of that sand. I mean, sand and salt, I think, are the worst
Yeah.
things. Get sand, particularly with lenses, when when you get that crunching sound as you're turning the focusing ring on and you go, oh no,
I
that
know.
doesn't sound good. It's just
Yeah, and you have to kind of immediately tend to your gear after you get sand or salt. I mean, sometimes I guess I'll get salt water in places on my camera and I don't even know it, and I'll pick it up like a week. I still have this on my gear, but I get that white oxidation
yeah.
around certain areas and it keeps coming out, and I'll just take an alcohol swab and I'll clean it up and it just keeps coming out. So I assume there's some sort of salt or something interacting with the metal because of the salt water, and it's what it is, I guess. But I don't clean my gear often. I used to come back from trips, or if I went out on a shoot, I would get my lens cleaner, and I have my, I've got all the, the little rocket blower. You blow off the lens, and you kind of take that brush and you get then you do the lens, and I would clean everything up perfect. Now I have the lenses on the cameras, and then I just have them in the closet with all my gear, and I just grab it. I haven't cleaned my gear probably in, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. And I've never had a lens so dirty. You know how you'll see people with, I guess in a rainstorm, you have to clear things off if you get water on your lens, but I've never had dust on the external side of the lens impact my images. I could have all kinds of junk and dust. I've never seen it come through in my
Particularly with the
on my
long
telephoto lens.
telephotos. Yeah, because that's so close.
Yeah.
To the lens, it's on the lens.
Yeah.
And your subject's so far away in comparison that it's never going to impact. It's rather like, I mean, I did I think I can't remember whether I said this, whether I'd been to, I think I had been to out with Victoria, and we'd been to the Hawk Conservancy, and we were shooting, captive birds. And it's amazing how you can make the mesh of the enclosures disappear.
Oh yeah.
If you've got a long lens and the mesh is quite close to the lens and the bird's a decent enough distance away from the mesh, you can just make it disappear. So it's like you're shooting through it. But I mean, it's a similar sort of thing, isn't it? I mean, if you've got a load of crap on the front of your lens, but you're at a long focal length and the subject's a reasonable distance away, you're never going to see that. Unless, the only caveat to that is, unless you're shooting directly into the sun and you've got a load of dust all over your lens, and then that will tend to have an effect. So yeah, that's when to be careful of that. But it is amazing what you can put your kit through and it will just survive and not have any impact.
Yeah. And speaking of dust too, like on the inside, I used to always get issues with my old DSLRs where, if I stopped down f/18 for whatever reason, or, dust would always be on the sensor. The 1DX, as a matter of fact, were notorious for that. They used to say there was oil splatter from the factory. I got my 1DX, I think it was my Mark II. I think it was my Mark II when I bought it years ago. I went out the first time I shot with it, and I stopped down for whatever reason. There was crap all over. I'm like, what the hell? I just bought this thing. So
it's like I came back with measles.
Yeah, mirrorless cameras, I rarely do I see dust spots, and again, I'm not cleaning the sensor, nothing. Yeah.
No, I mean, how long have I had the Z9 now? 2 years nearly. I've never cleaned the sensor of that thing, and I don't think I've ever had to clean a dust spot in post on it.
Yeah, whatever they did, and I'm sure there's a good answer for this. I've never looked into it closely, but whatever they did in terms of the tech, it's fine. I mean, whenever you shut the camera down, it always does the self-cleaning thing. I don't know, maybe they've improved that.
And the Z9 has the little shield that comes down as well. So when you take the lens off, you're not exposing the sensor. The
little curtain
elements anyway. Yeah, the little curtain comes down.
Yeah, that might be it.
That's really handy. But saying that, dust, you know what dust is like. It'll get in anyhow. You think you're never immune to it completely, but how they manage it, I don't know. I mean, I don't shoot stop down very often. So I'm normally shooting open, wide open. So that helps. But
When I stop down for the intentional camera movement. So if
yes,
it's
yeah.
sunny, and I have to get, a matter of fact, I was shooting ducks and stuff not that long ago, and I wanted to do some motion for flight and moving around and whatnot. And I remember I stopped down like F18, F2, just because, it was light out and I wanted to go down like 1/10 or 1/20th of a second.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, with the movement and everything, you're kind of losing that.
Yeah.
It's going to get lost in that mess. A lot of the time. It's when you're shooting stop down against a blue sky, and then, you're shooting a bird in flight or whatever it might be. And then it's just so obvious, isn't it? You go, oh, look at that. Or you're shooting into a sunset or something like that. And it's just, the sun's got measles. But honestly, I can't recall cleaning a dust spot off an image from the Z9.
Yeah. You know what I do get on I have the R3 and the R5, and what I do get sometimes, I call them hot pixels. I don't know if you ever get that on certain images where there's like a little red. Normally it's red or blue. I call them hot pixels. I don't know what causes it, and it's not from lifting shadows in a dark area. They're just there in some of these images. But I notice it's more when I stop down for whatever reason. It's not when I'm wide open. I don't know.
And you get the dead pixels, don't you? Which I always thought would be a great name for a band, actually. The Dead Pixels.
The Dead Pixels. Yeah.
You get the little white spots.
It would have to be like an emo grunge kind of band if it's called the Dead Pixels. It doesn't sound like an upbeat.
But I haven't come across Dead Pixels for ages. Actually, thinking about it, not since. I can't recall with the Z9.
I haven't seen it, and I don't come across it on any of my gear now.
Yeah, used to in the early stages of digital photography, and I guess that because the pixel counts weren't so big back then as well, they were more obvious because they're bigger, right? On the screen. So it's funny the things you forget that you used to have to deal with, and then all of a sudden. You don't have to deal with them, and you just forget.
The one thing that I don't have to deal with a lot now, just because gear is lighter, and especially like image stabilization and IBIS and all the advancements over the years, I don't have to bring a heavy freaking tripod around. I hated doing that. I mean, Songbirds I do it with if I have the lens, if I have a flash set up and everything, and it gets you have to put it on a tripod. But outside of that, I love not having to shoot with a tripod. It's so freeing. And that's something too that I would beat up a lot, my tripod, because who cares, right? And then I get sand and water in that, and they ultimately fail after, even the Gitzo stuff I've spent a decent amount of money on over the years. It would fail after, using it so much. Then again, I never wanted to come home and wash it down and clean it out. I would just let it go.
Yeah, I've had an old Manfrotto tripod since the dawn of time. It seems, and that thing is just salt water, mud, sand. I've dropped it. I've the little rubber feet came off the ends very early on. You try buying rubber feet for a Manfrotto tripod. Almost impossible. So you actually then have to.
Really?
Yeah, wow. I couldn't find, not for my model. I couldn't find them. So in the end, I ended up buying. I think it was chair. You get the rubber feet for the chairs. Yeah. I managed to find some with the right diameter. So, and actually they're a hell of a lot cheaper. They're pennies. Whereas, if you went and bought proper, Manfrotto tripod, they charge you a fortune. It's like anything, isn't it? But these are like pennies. So that's and of course you can buy them in bulk. So every time one comes off, you just put another one on. So that thing. I mean, not that I use a tripod very, very, very rarely now. Because like you, I just hate it. It's just I find it so limiting. It's being photographed without a tripod is so liberating, and you can try so much. You can try things instantly. Whereas if you're on a tripod, you have to get shift the position. You miss stuff, and I hate it.
It sucks. I mean, even when I travel, it's the piece of gear. If I have to use, I care less about. I put it in my check luggage because I just don't care. I never, I don't baby tripods. Although I'm thinking about playing around with one in the summer, just specifically for some macro stuff where you have to be really precise with flowers or for insects. It just takes too long by the time you set it up and you
Yeah,
get
you
it.
missed it.
They're
Yeah.
gone. They're gone. But
Yeah.
certain types of flowers and stuff, I wouldn't mind doing it. But other than that, in the field anymore, there's just other than songbirds.
Yeah, I have to say
Yeah.
I do use it. I do use them for flower photography
Yeah.
quite a bit. I
It
do
gives you
still
some
prefer.
stability and you can kind of, yeah.
I do still prefer to handhold. And to be quite honest, with ISO being so good these days, the sensors being so good, uh, the sort of high ISOs, I really feel no need because I can get the shutter speed I need handheld by just
Yep.
playing around with the ISO. And okay, so it comes out a bit noisy. Well, there's all sorts of things we can do about with that, as we've talked about before.
Yeah.
And where do most pictures end up anyway? On social
Yeah.
media. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not printing those generally. So
Yeah.
you're never going to know. You're never going to know in fact, that was one of the things I did want to, I am going to put up, I think, on my Instagram account, or maybe I can put it up on the podcast Instagram account, is I've shot a couple of pictures when Georgina was here, really high ISO, because we went out one evening and there was just no light. And even she said to me, I think I took a picture of a little egret, and it was virtually dark. It was virtually, and she said, "Oh, there's just no point." Even she said, "There's just no point in shooting that, Rob." And I said, "No, I reckon I'll get something usable-ish out of it, because I quite liked the scene. It was." It was sat in a load of branches and stuff, and it was quite interesting from a texture point of view, and obviously being a white bird against a darker background, there was that nice contrast to it as well. And I don't know what I shot it at, but oh god, it was high. And yeah, if you go in there pixel peeping, it doesn't take long before you see it's getting pretty frail. But if I put it on Instagram, I don't think anybody pick it up.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. Yeah.
Gets the ISO. And I did a high key of a mallard, so I got basically the water surrounding it just white, but and just picked up the detail of the
Yeah, and
bird.
high key, you don't even have to worry about a high ISO, with the exception of the midtones, right? So if it's a mallard, maybe the greens or whatever, you'll see.
It was a female, so you got a lot
Yeah.
of browns and stuff in there. So but you'd never know. And people would be surprised. So yeah, I might shove those up and go guess the ISO. But people are now going to go stupid, aren't they? Because they know it's high.
The more I shoot too, I like grain. I used to be, silky smooth, right? Run that denoise over there, run that, and
run it again.
Yeah. And it all looks fake and, BSy. And then you start to get some artifacts even in the background. So I like a little grain. I like it more now than I ever did. And like we've said in other podcasts, it's better to have a higher ISO with a little bit of grain and a sharp image than a beautiful ISO 200 silky smooth that's not in focus.
Do you ever use that? Do you ever use ISO 200? I guess.
I mean, people. I know a lot of photographers who and I think it's the result of shooting with the, it's a pattern from shooting with cameras years ago where there was limitations on ISO, and I think the default is, let's get as grain free as possible and go down to ISO 200. Rarely am I under ISO 1000, even in, I want to be ready for action. Right. And if there's like a heron or something that's stagnant in a more landscape kind of environmental scene, then I'll intentionally bring my ISO down. If I think it's going to make a good print or whatever, I don't need to have a fast shutter. So I'm intentional about that, but outside of that, my ISO is pretty much cranked for action, because you never know when it's going to happen.
No, exactly. I mean, that's my starting point, is always 1000, and I just work from there. But, we've kind of gone off topic a bit, haven't we? But hey,
so many people shoot in manual ISO too, which I think, they shoot manual and they do auto ISO. I still like to control. That is one good thing with these new mirrorless cameras too. My R5 and my R3, I have 3 dials, so I can have a dial for ISO, dial for shutter, dial for aperture, and it's just, after a while, it just becomes pretty easy in cruise control to move things around. But
no, I'm the same. I will shoot in auto ISO sometimes, but then I'm messing around with exposure, with the with the balance of the exposure and the compensation button, which you might as well be messing around with the ISO anyway. So yeah, because I'll always want some arty effect if I can get it. So I'll always, I very rarely will expose as the camera wants me to expose it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't want that histogram in the middle. I want it one way or the other, generally speaking, because that's just the way I shoot. But
yeah,
I like to be in control. Yeah, I said we've gone off topic a little bit, but that's what
we're talking about. We're talking about how dirty we can get an image and make it look good, right?
Exactly. Well, I guess grainy's dirty, isn't it? But yeah, tripods. Yeah, I beat those up, and I just don't care. I just don't care.
The only thing I'm sensitive about, that I'm most sensitive about in the field, probably is my flash equipment. You have to be sensitive because you need your flash to work, right? So, and that's probably the daintiest of some of the gear that you're going to have. That's probably most sensitive. No matter what I do, like I do a lot of off-camera flash stuff. If I'm doing herps or macro, or even with birds, sometimes I'll play around with it if they're cooperative. But there's always something, right? Your hot shoe's dirty, you have to clean it out, or the flash didn't fire, and there's always issues from my standpoint in the field when you're playing around with flash, especially off-camera flash. So I try to protect it. Another bad thing that happened to me, and it happened multiple times, I use those flash extenders. Rob, have you ever used those? Better Beamer is the brand. And I'm looking around and I'm not paying attention to my gear or, whatever. And the sun hits it and it goes backward. And I had a flash it melted the flash and went right through. It still works. I have a hole in it. In my car, in my back seat, I had a hole. Amplifies the sun.
You nearly had a burnt car.
Yeah. So that's happened to me. So I'm always a bit careful with flash.
Talking
whether
about
it's full
flash,
sun or whether.
Yeah, talking about flash is probably my worst thing, or the worst thing I've ever done. It was such a stupid thing as well. I remember I was photographing. It was a small fish. I forget what it was, a blenny or something. Anyway, it's photographed in a tank, and I'm thinking, I want this flash at a certain angle, so I'm propping. It's just so stupid. Some of those tanks have like a sort of half. They open up half, don't the halfway little flap opens up to the half. Anyway, so I opened up the flap, and I'm trying to balance the flash on the flap and dangling over the water, and I'm doing this, and I'm just thinking, I just balance it there, and all of a sudden it overbalanced, and where it went, straight in the tank. And let me tell you, if a flash goes in the water, there's no coming back from that. And it was one of those branded flashes at $350 or $400 or whatever they are.
Oh yeah, they're not cheap. If you don't buy like Godox or whatever, and you got to buy Canon or not, you're going to go for a ride. I mean, they're never cheap.
Yeah, and from the way I shoot, there is no point in buying branded flashes. Really, it's just no point. Why would you pay $350, pounds, whatever, for a branded Nikon, Canon, whatever flash, when you can buy a unknown brand, or there's lots of alternatives out there for $50 that does 90% of what your branded flash will do.
I'm just thinking the only thing maybe that you gain would be, a lot of the cameras now, you can operate the flash settings in the camera itself, right? Because it's Nikon, so you can go in the menu and do it, as opposed to doing it directly on the flash. Maybe that's what you gain. Yeah, I don't know. There's not many advantages.
You can still do things like I can think of Yongnuo, that brand.
Oh, that's Chinese. Yeah, Chinese, that's a little. I mean, that's like it's more disposable than even Godox.
Exactly. So this is the point I'm getting to. So
you can really beat it up. You can really beat up the Yongnuo, because you're gonna have to buy another Yongnuo for the next time.
But it's a good point. People don't talk about this actually. You talk about your camera and your lens. People don't mention flash a lot. But if you dunked a $50 flash in a rock pool or in the sea, whatever, and you lost it, you're not going crying home, are you? I mean, it's one of those things, it's not going to please you, but it's disposable, right?
Yeah, and you think to yourself, it was only going to break on the next shoot anyhow, so
Well,
better goes in the water.
no, you say that. I've had a set of two or three Yongnus with a remote thing that you shove in the hot shoe, and you can control up to 4 flashes, I think, with it. Yeah,
Wow.
and I've had that for years, and it's been
All
reliable
right.
as hell. It's really been really. I was so surprised, and I think those were, yeah. I think the flash units themselves maybe £50 each, and the controller 20, something like that. I mean,
Mm,
really cheap when you think about it.
wow.
I mean, I bought a
Yeah.
whole system, 3 flash system, for the price of 1 speed light. Branded speed
Mm,
light. And for me, it's just, what's the point in going and having a brand? To me, there was no advantage.
yeah.
For the
Yeah.
photography I was doing, I was using the flash for. There's no advantage. I mean, I guess
Hmm.
recycling times, power output, maybe with some of the branded things might be slightly better. But do you want to eat Kellogg's cornflakes at $2 a packet, or a supermarket brand that's 90%
Yeah.
as good for like 20 cents?
Yeah.
It's a bit like that for me.
Captain Crunch,
That extra
Captain
10%
Crunch
isn't
versus
worth the
the
premium.
puffins.
Yeah. Yeah, the extra
Yeah.
10% of quality isn't worth the money. And so I think that's a good tip. If you're worried about kit and you've got those sort of accessories, then maybe don't go down the branded route, go down some of the cheaper things. So if you break something, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they don't last as long, and they won't. I mean, I've got a ring flash that just, lasted a couple of years, and that was it. Not that I use it terribly often, but you just think, well, that's okay. It was, 30, 40 pounds, whatever. I just buy another one.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point too. I think when it comes to gear, I like to spend most of my money on the gear I'm using the most, right? Like a ring flash is a good example. That's a pretty specific thing, unless you're, shooting, insects and you're primarily a macro shooter, I guess. But I'm not using flash all the time. I mean, that's probably 20% of my shoot, maybe less than that. So invest in the gear that you use most often. For stuff you need in special situations, if there's third-party brands and you could save money, do it. All
Yeah.
the
Yeah. I mean, I would say
Yeah.
with cameras and lenses, there is no substitute for buying the best you can afford.
Yeah.
Because the more expensive it is, the more robust it's generally going to be. When it comes to all these accessories, just if it does the job and you break it, and it doesn't matter. Whereas if it's a branded thing and it's cost you hundreds of dollars and it breaks, or you drop it in a fish tank or whatever you do with it, and actually it's easier to drop something like a flash than your camera and your lens, because you're generally holding on to that for dear life most of the time. But with a flash, you're balancing it here or there or whatever, and the opportunity for misfortune is greater.
I've had some flashes chewed up by animals too. This is the camera trap stuff,
I was gonna say,
bears
camera
and
traps,
yeah. I'm like, you show up and things are all, and it's normally the bears that screw them up, and you show up and stuff's all over the place. And you're like, wait a second, where's my camera and my and then you just have to walk, walk around in a perimeter, and eventually you'll find it, and it's all chewed up, and it's part of the thing. Again, you don't want to put the best flash on there. Put the Yongnuo on there for or the Godox or whatever. Don't put your $500 Canon flash. So Mama Bear takes it for a ride.
Yeah, exactly. And presumably you're using cheap, secondhand cameras as well when you're doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I use I've got it's got it's like a metal container that I put it in so it protects it from the elements, because you have to. I use a Rebel, and speaking of third-party brands, it's called Optica, and it's a Chinese brand, and they kind of mimic like Laowa, I guess, it's kind of like it's a 15 millimeter wide angle. And I use that. I think it's manual focus, so it's perfect for situations like that, and it doesn't work too badly.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of choosing the gear to suit the circumstances and how likely it is to get damaged as well. I mean, if you're camera trapping for bears, there's a high probability some of that kit's going to get pretty beaten up.
Yeah. Or stolen too, especially if you're in, I've done this before too. I've set up. I've never had my gear stolen, but I do set up traps sometimes. I don't know if I should. I probably shouldn't. In like state parks and certain, but it's so off the beaten path that I know where it is. But you never know. A hunter can come across it or somebody randomly, and you take that risk. I normally, when I do it, I do it like I have some family members that own a lot of property in some rural areas, so I'll do it, or even on my my property at the Eastern Shore, but. It's typically best to do it somewhere where only you have access to, or it's your land or a family's property. If not, you never know; it could be stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen? I think the worst thing I think people would see would be a 600 prime falling off a tripod or something. Have you ever seen that? I mean, it's sort of 15 grand or whatever they are. That is going to hurt.
That's a bummer. Yeah. I've never seen it in person, but I've seen clips and some blooper reels and things. And it's like, yeah.
I know people that have had that happen more than once, and they've gone through a couple of, 600 primes just falling off tripods, and man, that's
I mean, that's
gotta hurt.
Tough. That's tough. Yeah. That's real tough. I mean, now what's a 600 prime if you're buying it 15,000, 16,000. I mean, Canon has an 800 millimeter f5.6. I think it's like 20,000. I mean, the inflation over the past couple of years is really, especially the super telephotos at the high end, it's really bumped up the prices on those. And
I mean, they're eye watering, aren't they? I mean,
it's terrible.
That was that 400, the Nikon 400 2.8. What's that? 14 grand or something like that?
Is that what the one with the internal telly?
Yeah.
It's got the 1.4 telly built inside. Yeah. I think it's around that. Yeah.
It's about 14 grand, which is, I mean, it's why I don't buy them. I know that they've got their uses, obviously, and what a great lens to have, but I would rather have the 180 to 600 at £1,500.
Yeah.
Use that most of the time. And I'm going to be pissed off if that, if I ruin that somehow or other, I drop it, or I, dunk it in the lake, or I do something to destroy it, but it's not going to hurt as badly, and it's insured, of course, but it's not going to hurt as badly as as a big prime, something like that, which, you definitely should insure, but
definitely.
Nobody wants to see that.
If you're going to insure anything, if you have a 600 prime, insure that over everything. I took the plunge years and years ago, and I remember I bought a 600 millimeter f4, but I forget what mark it was. It was anyhow, it was a while ago, and then the version 2 came out, and I upgraded. And each time you upgrade, you spend a couple thousand, but you sell it, so it doesn't feel as bad. I have the 600 Mark III. I got it it came out in 2019, right before I call it the mirrorless revolution with camera. And then they have a 600 now, and all they just changed the attachment for the new lens mount. They kind of soldered this silver piece on. I'm like, I'm not going to upgrade. So hopefully I can get a couple more years out of this. I've been shooting with it 6 years almost now, and it's fine. But,
well, I think, and that's the other thing, isn't it? Make your gear last if you can.
Yeah. So be a little careful. Beat it up, but don't be be a little.
Don't be brutal.
Don't drop it off an aqueduct.
Absolutely. Oh dear. Well, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I've seen people do. It's difficult to think of things off the top of your head, but people do. I think it's like cars. People treat their gear in different ways, I think, and a bit like you actually. Some people just don't clean their gear forever, and they just put it through hell and expect it. I mean, I've seen some pictures online of people's gear, when they put it through absolute hell and it's still working. And then
there's a direct correlation. I hate to say it, people may disagree with me, but I think the more professional you are, the better you are as a photographer. Chances are your gear is going to look worn and used at minimum. And you're gonna, if everything looks perfect, you're not, you're most likely an amateur, and you're not at that stage yet. So that's
and the other thing is, I mean, a lot of these guys, will be sponsored to a degree.
Yeah.
And I know people
send it back to Canon to fix up.
Yeah, or we'll just borrow any kit that they want off a brand because they're working with them. And if something happens, something happens.
Yeah.
And I think the brand is going, oh, well, this is one of those things. If you're taking cutting edge images that are, which is the reason we wanted to work with you in the first place, then there are risks involved with that. But you're a manufacturer anyway, so what does it matter if you lose a few items of kit? Doesn't really.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're having to, I think that's the thing. If you're having to buy it with your hard-earned cash, you can understand why you'd be a little bit nervous about really pushing the boat out with it and testing its testing how strong it is and how resilient it is to these elements. But if you want to push the boundaries with your image making, then that's part of the game.
Yeah,
I think you really have to.
And the more gear you have, the more kit that you have, it's harder to keep it. Because you're constantly changing things in the field. Like if I'm out shooting and I have a telephoto, I need more reach, I'm taking the camera off, I'm putting a 1.4 tele on, a 2x tele. You're moving things around. You have to set things down on the ground or the ice, and so things get dirty, and that's just the nature of it. I was in the Falklands some years ago, and we were shooting on this remote island. It was called New Island. There was a Nat Geo team there, and they were shooting for a series that turned out to be called Hostile Planet. And they were photographing this rockhopper colony, the waves crashing in.
You remember,
I watched these guys because I was just photographing for leisure for my own portfolio when I was there. And these guys obviously were putting all these clips together. They weren't doing audio. They said they had everything in, I guess Nat Geo has this huge audio library. So so they don't even have to worry about that. They were just doing visuals, and the drones, everything. I mean, they were improvising, they were putting cameras and they were trying to weigh the cameras down in these shallow pools. So they were putting rocks on top. I mean, they beat the hell out of everything that they had. And again, you have to do that if you're trying to optimize whatever you're, what you're looking for some of these shots, especially in extreme conditions. But watching them work with the gear was, it was fairly eye opening. I'm like, they're not here for the gear.
I think people would be surprised at how robust this gear can be actually, and what you can actually put it through. It looks so delicate. Everybody tells you it's so delicate. It's all electronics and this, that, and the other. But if you're shooting with the higher end stuff, it's better sealed. It's, the bodies are stronger. It can go through some stuff. As I said, I dropped a camera 10 feet off a wall. Okay, granted, it landed in mud, but it didn't break. It hit the wall on the way down. The thing didn't break. I carried on shooting with that as if nothing had happened, basically. And all I had was a damaged hot shoe, it was only a bit of bent metal, which I managed to bend back, and the flash would fit on it eventually. But you will be surprised at what you can put it through.
Takes the Band-Aid off, right? Once you get that scratch, like you were saying, with the car or whatever, and it's not perfect anymore, right?
Yeah,
it's
the first injury hurts, and then after that, you just you're not so cared. You don't care so much about it. So, but I said all cameras are different, all brands are different. You just got to know the limitations of your kit. But the only way of learning that, is to put it in some extreme situations. But I think the worst thing really is salt and sand for me.
Yeah.
Definitely. But other than that, crack on and see what your kit will do. You'll be surprised. And if you break some stuff, it's part of the game.
That's right.
It's part of the game. So
I have that Eagles song in my head now. Take it to the limit.
Take it to the limit.
To the limit, yeah.
Well, at least you're not putting another earworm in. Josh sent me this message the other day on Instagram. It was some silly, what was it? Some silly account you follow or something.
It's this crazy couple. They're based out of somewhere in Indiana, rural America, and they they're a bit gratuitous in how they demonstrate certain reenactments of 80s, mostly 80s and old classic hard rock stuff. And it was "We Built the City" by Starship was the song.
And it's a song I hate.
And I actually have that album, believe it or not. It's one song that I don't mind. It's what the hell was the name of that? Knee Deep in the Hoopla was the name of the album. I've always liked Grace Slick, but I think she would even profess that song. She thinks it sucks.
Yeah. Anyway, so I had this
It's a timepiece.
song in my head all day, thanks to Josh. So yeah, I did thank him for that. Anyway,
Marconi plays the mamba, I think is what they say, which that I never even knew that until older. When you're a kid and you hear it, you're like, what the hell does that even mean? But Marconi invented the radio.
I don't even want to know.
I Googled it at one time. I'm like, what are they saying?
I built this. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, it's a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
So what's coming up for you?
Just some more shooting. It's on the weekends. By the way, I've been shooting actually recently with a podcast listener. Interesting enough, I was in a wildlife refuge and the visitor center. I was just checking some things out, and he comes up to me. Scott Warner, his name is, nice guy. And he comes up to me and goes, "Hey, are you Josh Galicki? I love your podcast." And, we started chit-chatting a little bit. And he doesn't live far from me, and we've shot actually a couple times. So I'll probably keep shooting locally over the next couple of weeks. The snow's melting, so some ducks, owls. I'd love to get an opportunity with snowy owls before the winter is out, before things start moving around. Come March, that's where things start moving out. Tundra swans will start leaving. And interesting enough, the first migrants are starting to come back. Red-winged blackbirds and robins are the first things I see. There are, of course, like regional migrants. They're not coming from South America or anything like that. But I'll maybe start focusing on them. And then things will really start heating up in April. And then May is the best time of year here.
Yeah. So, I guess things will be starting to come back here. I don't know what I'm likely to find in Wales. Probably what I found last year, probably purple sandpiper and curlew and sanderling and
ruddy turnstones are there? Are they
ruddy turnstone? Yeah, you get those there. So that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to a week. Hopefully, the weather doesn't look good again. I was looking at the forecast the other day, and it doesn't look good. I'm just praying for some decent light, but I don't think I'm going to get it. Well, it'll be what it'll be, and I'll
high key
or motion or something like that. I'll continue this sort of project with motion. But interesting, you were talking about owls, because I did post a picture of a short-eared owl, because I've been out to Salisbury Plain. I must have been between Christmas and New Year, I think. Jennifer and I went out for a walk because she'd never seen a short-eared owl before. And I know we get them on the plane, but it's a big place, so anyway, within 15 minutes we got one. So that was really cool. Just happened to have the camera, but the light was crap. But the moon was out. So I took, a number of shots of the moon, and then I managed to get some distant shots of, the owl. It wasn't great. But then I got them back on the computer, and I thought, actually, if I merged one of the owl with one of the moon, and I don't normally do this stuff because I like to work with a single image. I just think it's much more satisfying from my point of view. But I thought, I wonder if that would work, and it kind of did. And I thought, well, maybe if I shoved that on my Instagram account and we're completely honest about how it was done, what the reaction would be, see if we can get people talking. And that worked. People did react to that. It was interesting, the comments that would come back about what people felt about combining two images like that. And some people were saying, well, that's part of modern photography. It's just one of those things. And other people were saying, yeah, slightly disappointed now you said that, like the image, and then, it's a composite. Not, I like it in one shot. And I kind of understand both camps, and I lean more to the single image myself. I just think it's more skillful, but there's a place for. Anyway, it was an interesting exercise.
Well, the wildlife photography community of all the photography communities I found is the most fundamentalist when it comes to images, right? Or most purist, maybe is the best way to say it, compared to like people who photograph fashion or food. Any kind of manipulation to make the image better, they're fine with it, or any kind of ways to express differently. But when it comes to wildlife, people are much more purist.
Yeah, and I think I do get it, because if you're almost saying you're almost not deceiving people, but a certain behavior might not have happened in a certain way, but you're trying to say that it did. Whereas if you're photographing food or fashion, it doesn't really matter, because
Everybody knows that Big
yeah,
Mac doesn't look and taste as good.
exactly, or
Yeah.
or the model's really not that as beautiful as she's made. Anyway, you get my drift. It's people with wildlife, I think there's a tendency for people wanting it to be as it was, as you saw it, or it might not be as your naked eye saw it, but you've used a situation with your camera to create something beautiful from something that was in front of you in a single frame, or it's so I do understand it, but it was I did it on purpose. And I think the thing about this, as I said in the post, it's about being honest about how you've taken it. I think that's the most important thing. Which seemed to be the theme that people were coming back with anyway. As long as you're honest about it, what's the problem?
Integrity means a lot in wildlife, right? Because at the end of the day, these are subjects that are declining that we need to care about. It's different between photographing an owl versus a runway model. Yeah.
Do you know what? I think integrity is the best word for it. I mean, it really is. If you can't be honest, what does that say about your own personal integrity?
Yeah.
So, and that comes across in your photography. So honesty is the best thing. Always the best policy. Anyway, I digress. So so for me, just another week in Wales, hopefully with some shorebirds, waders, whatever you want to call them. We'll see what comes of that. Hopefully we get some decent light at some point. Don't know, but we'll see. And other than that, just be hoping for some better weather coming in and some, first signs of spring happening. There's already some snowdrops coming up, but I have to say, not in the numbers that they were in previous years. And then it'll be toad patrol again as well when I get back from Wales. They'll start their migration again. So it'll keep us busy for a few weeks. I'm going to try and get some better pictures of them this year. Really ought to take advantage of that and really try and document properly what happens. I've tried it in the past, but so I think that might be
a good story
project. So with my new macro lens, I bought the Z mount macro lens and chopped the other one in.
Perfect opportunity to use that.
Exactly. So that should be fun. But well, thanks for the time and thanks for the chat. Another interesting discussion. I hope everybody enjoyed that, and I promise you we will get some guests on. It's been a bit of a nightmare trying to organize things with stuff that's been going on, but and trying to organize time when everybody can sit down and do it with the time differences we've got as well. So I do promise we will get some guests on shortly, but we're working on those now. So hopefully the next episode will be a guest episode. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for your time, Josh, and we'll see you all again next time.
Thanks everybody.
You have been listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. If you have enjoyed the content, then please help us to spread the word by sharing a link on your social media platforms, giving us a like, and leaving us a comment. See you all again next time.